Elon built electric cars, he's going to Mars. Why isn't he even involving himself with Twitter? It would be like if the Prince of England gave it all up just to marry an actor from Suits.
On the evening of the 10th of May 2025, on a stage in 30 Rockefeller Plaza in New York City, Colin Jost looked into the camera during Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update segment and made a joke. It was 11 words. 11 words that rippled through the royal commentary world for months afterward, that were clipped and shared and reacted to and dissected across YouTube, across Instagram, across X, and across every platform where people who follow Harry and Meghan's story gather to discuss it. Here is what he said. He began a joke about the US-UK trade deal. He said President Trump had announced a new agreement that would reopen British markets for American companies, and then he paused. A photograph of Harry and Meghan appeared on the screen behind him, and he said, "All that Britain demands in return is that we keep these two." The studio audience laughed, loudly, and somewhere between that laughter and the comment sections that followed, a certain kind of story was born. The story where Meghan broke down, where she was in tears, where she lost it, where the joke had broken something inside her. The question I want to sit with today, because it matters more than the clickable version of this story, is what the joke actually reveals. Not about Meghan's emotional reaction, which no one has documented or confirmed, but about something rather more significant. What does it mean when Saturday Night Live makes a joke about you, and what does the laughter in that room tell us about where Harry and Meghan actually stand in American public life right now? If you find this kind of honest unpacking more useful than the dramatic headline, I hope you will stay with this channel. There is always more going on beneath the surface than the title suggests. Let us begin with Colin Jost himself, because understanding who he is matters to understanding the weight of the joke he made. Colin Jost has been a cast member and head writer at Saturday Night Live since 2012. He has been co-anchor of Weekend Update, the show's satirical news segment, since 2014. He is one of the longest-serving cast members in the show's 50-year history. He is also, since 2020, the husband of Scarlett Johansson, one of the most bankable film stars on Earth. He is not a fringe commentator or a provocateur looking for controversy. He is a mainstream American comedian deeply embedded in the liberal entertainment establishment that Harry and Meghan explicitly aligned themselves with when they moved to California. That alignment matters because Saturday Night Live is not a right-wing platform. It is not a tabloid. It is not a British newspaper with a documented history of animosity toward the Duchess of Sussex. It is the show that has parodied every conservative figure in American public life for 5 decades. It is the show that Harry and Meghan's closest celebrity allies, the Beyoncés and Oprahs and George Clooney's of their world, have hosted, appeared on, and aligned themselves with throughout their careers. And in May 2025, that show looked at Harry and Meghan and made a joke. Not a mean-spirited, targeted personal attack, not the kind of sustained mockery that defined certain British tabloid treatment of Meghan for years. A single punchline, a quick political observation dressed in a trade deal metaphor, but a punchline that landed, that the audience laughed at, that was clipped and shared on social media and viewed by millions. And this is where the story is genuinely worth examining, because the joke itself is not cruel. When you actually read it without the dramatic packaging around it, it is a perfectly constructed piece of political comedy. It takes a real news event, the US-UK trade deal, and attaches an absurdist punchline to it. Britain gets markets opened. America keeps Harry and Meghan. The joke works because it reflects a real cultural truth that has been building for several years. The sense in certain parts of both American and British public opinion that Harry and Meghan occupy an awkward middle space, neither fully British nor fully American, neither fully royal nor fully private, neither fully famous nor fully relatable.
That is the joke. It is not mean-spirited about Meghan specifically, it includes Harry equally. It is a joke about their situation, not about their character. But it was also made by someone who occupies exactly the kind of liberal American media establishment that the Sussexes have cultivated as their natural home since 2020, and that is the part that stings. Because here is what nobody talked about much at the time. The night that joke aired, Harry and Meghan were not at home watching SNL. They were at the SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles at the final show of Beyoncé's Cowboy Carter tour. Harry was photographed kissing Meghan on the cheek. He was wearing a forest green hat embroidered with Archie and Lilibet's names. They were dancing, they were together, they were, by every visual account, having a lovely evening. 2 days later, the SNL joke was all over the internet. And the gap between those two images, the couple at Beyoncé, joyful and present, and the viral narrative of Meghan breaking down in tears, tells you something precise about how this media cycle operates. Because there is no documented evidence that Meghan broke down, no confirmed source, no insider account, no spokesperson statement acknowledging distress, no Instagram post suggesting emotional turmoil. The people closest to the Sussexes have not confirmed any tearful reaction. The Sussexes themselves have said nothing publicly about the joke. What there is, instead, is a very large number of YouTube videos whose titles promise that Meghan was in tears, that she lost it, that she broke down, and whose content, when you watch them, does not actually contain any such evidence. What they contain is commentary about the joke itself, speculation about how Meghan might have felt, and the kind of emotionally charged framing that generates clicks. The reaction was not documented, the breakdown was not confirmed, the tears were a narrative construction, not a verified event. And this is the pattern we have seen before, discussed honestly in this space. The real event, the joke, which is genuine, verifiable, and actually quite interesting on its own terms, gets wrapped in an invented emotional response that makes it more dramatic, more shareable, and more commercially effective as a piece of content. But here is what I think is actually worth discussing, because the real story here is more interesting than whether Meghan cried. The real story is this: what does it signal when Saturday Night Live makes a joke about you? SNL has been making political and cultural jokes for 50 years. The targets of those jokes have consistently been people who have overreached, people whose public image has become so large and so managed that satirical deflation, presidents, pop stars, celebrities whose personal brand has become so polished that comedy can find the gap between the image and the reality and slip through it. When SNL jokes about you, it is a certain kind of cultural recognition. It means you are a large enough presence in American public consciousness that a mainstream comedy audience sitting in a studio in New York on a Saturday night will instantly understand the reference and laugh at the punchline. That is not nothing. But it also means something else. It means the sympathy has shifted. In 2018, when Harry and Meghan married and the world was swept up in what felt like a genuine fairy tale, no mainstream American comedian would have made that joke. In 2020, when Meghan spoke about her suicidal thoughts and the institution's alleged indifference, SNL would not have made that joke. The cultural moment was different. The sympathy was different. By May 2025, something had changed, not in Meghan's character, not in the facts of what happened inside the royal family, but in the cultural weather, in the gap between the public version of the Sussex story and the lived experience of people watching from the outside. Royal commentator and author Omid Scobie, one of the journalists closest to the Sussex camp, wrote that the joke reflected what he called a genuine shift in American public perception, that 5 years after their departure, the narrative of the brave couple who escaped institutional cruelty had begun to compete with a different narrative of a couple who had built a significant commercial and media enterprise on the back of that departure, who had aligned themselves with celebrity and wealth in ways that felt, to some observers, at odds with the language of authenticity and vulnerability they used publicly. Neither of these narratives is the whole truth. The real picture of Harry and Meghan, as with almost all real human stories, is considerably more complicated than either version. But comedy finds the gap. Comedy always finds the gap. And what Colin Jost's 11 words told us, more precisely than any royal commentary analysis had managed, was where that gap currently sits. Now, there is one more layer to this story that deserves honest acknowledgement. Some of the commentary around this joke crossed a line that the joke itself did not. The joke was political and situational. It was about their position, neither here nor there, neither kept nor wanted. That is fair territory for satire. But certain YouTube videos and certain comment sections attached to coverage of this joke became something different. They became specifically personal about Meghan, about her appearance, her ambition, her character, her race. The joke was about two people equally. The aftermath was, in many spaces, about one of them disproportionately. That disparity is not invisible, and it's worth naming directly, as this audience, who remember Diana, who remember what it looks like when a woman is made the sole target of a cultural pile-on, will have felt it too. The joke was fair, much of what followed was not, and Meghan, whatever her public image, whatever your view of her choices or her statements or her relationship with the institution, is a real person. A mother who had Disneyland photos on her Instagram the week after this joke went viral. A woman who, by every documented account, was not sitting in a corner crying. She was at Beyoncé. She was dancing. She was present. So, what is the real takeaway from Colin Jost's 11 words? Not that Meghan broke down. That did not happen in any documented sense. Not that Saturday Night Live has declared war on the Sussexes. It was one punchline in a 40-minute show. But that the cultural moment has shifted. That the sympathy that once surrounded Harry and Meghan in America has not disappeared, but has become more complicated, more conditional, more aware of the gap between the language they use and the life they live. And that's worth understanding honestly, not as a verdict on Meghan's character, but as a signal about where public attention actually is, where the comedy finds its gap, and why a joke about a trade deal with a photograph behind it can land so cleanly in a room full of strangers. 11 words, a pause, a photograph, a laugh. And the real story, as always, is not in the joke, it's in what made the joke possible.